Thank you guys again for taking the time to be able to join. My name is Sam Jenks. I'm the CRO at Kodiak Hub. I'll be guiding you guys today on our journey to automating supplier qualification. We're going to focus on how our capabilities at Kodiak can be able to help businesses to automate supplier qualification, but also we're going to guide a little bit about the kind of status of procurement today and the importance of qualification, due diligence, and risk management within the supplier relationship, which is kind of the starting point for today's webinar. Thank you for taking the time to join wherever you are physically. I myself am physically actually calling in from my apartment office today, which I also have my co-host with me, Charlie, the typically office dog. So he's going to be in the background. Hopefully he's not too opinionated during today's session, and we won't have any disruptions from his side. For today's agenda, let's get right into it. We are going to talk a little bit about the new reality within procurement, but also supply chain. Facing the facts of that are really that good qualification is no longer kind of a nice to have, but instead really a need to have in today's climate. We're going to then move into a session where we get to talk a little bit about moving from being reactive, which unfortunately a lot of teams are still in the I would say the having troubles with moving out of this place of being reactive into being more proactive. And that's not something that we are, strangers to. It's a typical mode of operating for a lot of businesses, especially when you don't have, the right resources, meaning the right team, the right process, and the right technology to be able to get more proactive. We're going to give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of Kodiak and how our solution can be able to provide some some best practices, I would say, to automating supplier qualification. And then we'll have a session towards the end for questions and answers as well. Feel free during today's session, jump into the chat bubble. Please take a moment to be able to read in the chat bubble as well. If you have any questions, feel free to just drop them into the chat bubble during the session. One of my colleagues will simply mark those as questions, and then we will return to them as well towards the end of the session. As you'll also probably see in the chat bubble, we are also going to have some polls and some handouts during today's session. So keep your voting fingers ready during today's session, because we're going to both have some opportunities to vote on some polls, but also some opportunities to be able to provide you with some documentation as well, some models and the like that might help you guys in your way of working. So for those of you that don't know about us at Kodiak, very briefly, we are a provider of a supplier relationship management platform. It is a modular and scalable one. Our solution is really a 360-degree view of suppliers, providing different types of modules in a box of chocolates, really, to allow our customers to be able to not only manage their supplier relationships in a smart and sustainable manner, but also to drive forward those relationships over time. Again, it's a modular suite, so some of these capabilities focus a little bit more on kind of this risk management, due diligence, and qualification of suppliers, whereas others are more focused on, quality management, ESG, performance management, and ongoing collaboration. But with that being said, we'll dive into some of the capabilities of the platform during today's session. If you're interested, of course, in the solution, you can always reach out and learn more from our team there as well. Before, though, we get into today's session, because it is important, I think, to understand where everybody is at today, so we can kind of take the temperature of things. I would be interested in first launching our very first poll by asking, which type of tool are you currently using to manage your suppliers? Do you have a tool in space today? So please take a moment. I've now launched the poll to respond on that particular poll. So as the responses are rolling in, we see that there's about 54 people in attendance. It sees about 30 people have responded. Please take the time to respond now. So it's a mixed bag here. It feels as if quite a few, about 60% of people either are just using homegrown solutions or things that you've built up in spreadsheets, Word documents, PDFs and alike. This is still a benchmark that we see is very common. About 20% of attendees obviously then have some type of a legacy software, SAP Ariba, Coupa, etc. And 8 of you guys in attendance have a dedicated SRM, which is really great. Nice to see that you guys have a dedicated SRM in place. And I think that, it's inspiration, of course, whether you're working with us or with others, to be able to have a good starting point to, of course, automate supplier qualification as well. So let's get into the day's content. The first thing that I wanted to just kind of talk about, we're amongst friends, right? Let's be honest here. Due diligence as a concept, it's not sexy, all right? People in your organization aren't getting excited about it. People in supplier organizations aren't getting excited about it. Governance and qualification aren't the things that are going to get massive budgets when it comes to technology, right? We need to focus on how we can be able to tie the use case of qualification to a greater goal, right? The bottom line, though, is also DD today is not just something that is a nice to have, is it also a need to have? So we're going to talk a little bit about the ways, the shifts in the market currently today, politically, geopolitically as well, that impact the need for solutions for qualification and due diligence within the supply chain. Because you guys know it, but it's important, of course, that your management teams know it, that your boards know it, and that you guys are getting your slice of the pie, especially as we're coming in towards budgeting season when it comes to, headcount and resources for supplier management, but also, of course, new tooling. There are a lot of new challenges that procurement is facing. I mean, the role is shifting. If you would look at the procurement, 10 years ago, you would say that it's focused on cost reduction, risk management, and maybe even 5 years ago, this was still the case. A lot of the happenings within the last kind of 5 to, I would say, 7 years have shifted the responsibilities, but also the challenges that procurement is facing today. Your management is really expecting more of you when it comes to transparency and traceability, resilience in the supply chain, but also the ability to be able to push forward kind of the products and services that your end users or your end customers are really utilizing, right? There's new requirements, which requires you guys as procurement individuals to have new ways of working. And I think that this is something that most people in today's session could be able to resonate with. One of the reasons why these new requirements have come is simply because there's a legislative tsunami coming for us all, right? It's real. In 2024, the requirements are growing. And this is a wall of legislation that's not only in the EU, but the North America and other regions around the world are going to follow this particular suit. It's kind of the same trend that we saw with GDPR, right? Which started in the EU and took its way over to North America with different data privacy acts as well. The thing that you need to stay ahead of is that this doesn't feel like a tsunami. You got to be ready to ride the wave rather than just laying on the beach waiting for it to happen, right? On top of course, the legislative tsunami, other elements of, in the political sphere are really picking up. Geopolitically, as we all know, 2024 is going to be the biggest election year to date, which is very exciting. It poses a lot of opportunity, but it also poses a lot of potential, threats or uncertainty, right? This will be an unsettling year, right? It already is an unsettling year in a lot of ways, not only with what's happening, in elections, but also the conflicts going on around the world. And this also is having an impact on the macro picture, but also having an impact on knowing who it is that you're working with, right? What are their interests? Do they have them in the right place? And what does risk mean to you? Because the bottom line is that your suppliers are an extension of your business. And having an understanding of the materiality risk within your supply chain, related back, of course, to the reputational risk that you have, is incredibly important in this new geopolitical climate. Working with the right suppliers is also not just about making sure that you're keeping your doorstep clean, right? Let's be honest. Due diligence, qualification, risk management, it always kind of is focused on making sure that we're not going to, work with bad suppliers. But what about the opportunity, right? The opportunity to qualify and work with good suppliers. Suppliers are going to drive innovation, within your supply chain. Some of the recent, developments in businesses like Apple and BMW earlier this year, and you see this type of innovation continuously. I mean, 60 to 70% of innovation and product service development come from a supplier-enabled innovation, and these are things that are important to continue to remember. Qualification is equally important to performance as it is to risk management, simply. Now, let's take a second to look at some of the facts, right? Deloitte CPO survey, which they launch every single year, the 2024 is going to be coming very soon. We're all anxiously awaiting. It's a fantastic chief procurement officer survey. They survey a lot of the top enterprises, but also the mid-market as well. We see that during last year and leading into this year, a lot of the top enterprise priorities for CPOs and procurement teams were surrounding operational efficiency, enhancing CSR, developing resilience, and enhancing risk management, right? Without really good processes in place, good people, but also good technology focused on supplier management, these goals are not only overwhelming, but they're really unattainable, right? So these are the things that, of course, we need to keep in mind, that if we have these as priorities, we need to shift our way of working to be able to meet those particular priorities. Additionally, something to keep in mind, that's another fact, is that poor supply chain management from the perspective of due diligence and qualification can lead to less sustainable supplier bases, which again can be able to impact your business. So if it's a priority for you with ESG requirements and managing risk in the supplier base, enhancing your CSR profile, just remember, it's not just because your sustainability reports are going to look good. It's because you can actually be able to create competitive edge based upon working with businesses that are, of course, following more sustainable business practices. These are going to be the businesses that you also can trust, right? And again, in times of uncertainty, what do we need more than anything? We need suppliers that we can be able to trust, right? I'm telling you guys, but you should really be telling me, you know this better than I do. The bottom line is that when we lack resources, when we lack, really good processes, we get reactive, right? We're having a tough time within the space of procurement to be able to be proactive within supplier management. The bottom line is that, again, this requires good technology, automation, and orchestration to be able to do so. Why? Is so that you don't get caught in this bottom left-hand corner. This is a model that we talk about a lot with our clients, right? This is the journey that we're trying to take together with our clients, but it's also a journey that our solution takes our clients on. But really, whether you're working with technology or not to do it, this is a journey that you need to take within procurement to be able to be seen as, one of those stakeholders at the table that's driving value rather than just managing cost and risk, right? And this, of course, again, requires good technology, good people, good process to be able to take this particular journey as well. SRM is a discipline that can definitely help, right? I mean, it's not the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet here, right? But SRM as a concept is definitely one of those areas that I think is needing a lot more tender love and care, right? And a lot more attention within global businesses. The fact is that SRM is equally as critical to a procurement organization as CRM is to a sales and marketing organization, right? And they've had tools and processes for 15, 20, 25 years within that particular space. We believe that it's procurement's time, right? And ultimately to be able to unlock the, kind of more strategic elements of supplier relationship management, right? Following up on performance, managing collaboration and innovation and impact. This requires that the foundation of kind of more of these operational and tactical elements of supplier relationship management, that you have a very strong foundation. Because the bottom line is that you cannot collaborate or innovate. You cannot drive forward the performance or create real impact within your supply chain with suppliers that have risk profiles, with suppliers that don't align with your code of conduct, the business practices or the ethics that are supposed to be within your supply chain, right? We need to make sure that we're working with partners that we can trust before we aim to innovate and collaborate with them. And again, back to why supplier due diligence and qualification is not just about risk management. It is the foundation to driving performance. And this is one of the things that I think that we need to make the differentiation. And also that's back to where is the business case, right? For supplier relationship management. That's at the center of this as well. So if we're going to automate elements of supplier relationship management, we need to first and foremost talk about automation just for a second, right? And thanks to Dave, our content lead, who chose out this really fun stocky image, because I think that this stocky image also kind of describes how a lot of people think automation is going to happen. Press a big red button and it's going to be done for you. That's not the case, right? There's a lot of work that goes into automation, and any tech provider that's coming to you and saying that you can leave your head at home, you're not going to have to work to make automation happen. Well, that's not a tech provider that's being honest with you, simply, right? The bottom line is that good automation is about good setting up of parameters according to your goals, right? That's a requirement as a baseline, and then you can automate based upon it. So what I wanted to be able to do is offer up two different forms of automation so that we start like kind of bundling what are we talking about when we're talking about automation. Some of you guys may already know these things, so it might be repetitious. Some of you may be new to the world of automation and what it really truly means. So just quickly, two types of automation that I wanted to be able to highlight. First and foremost, RPA. This is the automation of tasks that are really based on, more predefined workflows. That technology, in essence, guides the process based on a human's definition and preset parameters for a particular desired outcome. So what does that mean in essence? You set up kind of what is your desired workflow and outcomes, and based upon inputs, the machine, of course, automates the process in a lot of ways. The second element, which I think that RPA together with can be able to help, and this is the buzz that's been around all over the place during 2024, is process orchestration, right? This is when you're applying automation to be able to put something into action, right? Orchestration is really an application of RPA where those predefined parameters, workflows, and goals involve various stakeholders, right? To be able to collaborate and then also to execute on a complex process. For example, something such as supplier onboarding, qualification, and/or approval in a more streamlined manner, right? And we know the challenges that are out there today when it comes to qualification and approval of suppliers. There's a lot of stakeholders involved, especially if you're in a regulated industry. But even if you're in a services industry, right? We work today, for example, with leading, legal service providers such as DLA Piper, just as much as we work with, deep process industry providers such as like Avantor in the pharmaceutical space, or, Yotun in the paint space. Both industries have their own challenges related to orchestration of processes to be able to qualify and onboard suppliers, but equally so, it's equally as important whether you're in a services space or, for example, a direct material and manufacturing space, to focus on orchestrating the processes related to approval as well, to make sure, again, that you can trust the suppliers that you're working with as well. When it comes to the life cycle of supplier management, this is a model that we like to show to a lot of our clients and also prospective clients. And feel free, screenshot as you'd like, as long as you give some credit to Kodiak when you're showing this off to your teams, if you're planning on showing it off to your teams. And we'll also be a part of the handout that we provide you with. But really, qualification is only part of the puzzle, right? As we talked about before, right? Qualification, risk management, due diligence, that's kind of the foundation to being able to drive performance, collaboration, and innovation with suppliers. But these are the areas that we really want to focus in on at the beginning of this of the kind of life cycle, when registering, qualifying, onboarding, assessing, and reviewing suppliers, because these are the things that can otherwise be very labor intensive, right? A lot of spreadsheets flying around within various folders on SharePoints. And it takes time and effort from your team, but also from the supplier. We have to remember that there's a fatigue on both sides of the table. And if we have unreliable vetting of our supplier profiles, then that's not only going to just be time consuming, it's a massive risk to our end business, right? So with a modern SRM that we're going to provide a little bit of a snapshot of how Kodiak works, These various modules that we're showing on screen here are some of the ways that we help our clients to be able to manage that kind of life cycle and automate those processes. And we'll show that in practice today. But these are really some of the steps that are most important that we focus in on when we're talking about automating and orchestrating the process for initial qualification, kind of due diligence, and also approval as well. So what are the steps to be able to automate? We have 8 different steps that we want to offer up for you guys as the viewers today, where we believe that these are kind of the baseline, the foundations to be able to automate the processes related to supplier qualification before we share these 8 different steps and then shift over to an actual demo of the platform to show off how those 8 different steps work within practice. I wanted to just quickly ask, how long does it take you guys today in attendance to qualify, onboard, and approve suppliers? Can you just take a moment to be able to respond on the survey poll that we just asked here? How long does it take you to be able to qualify, onboard, and approve a supplier? All right. More people responding. If you take a moment more to be able to respond before we carry on with the content. 38 people of the 65 in attendance have responded. I know that you might be answering emails elsewhere, so if you don't mind, come back to the session. We're about to get into the fun stuff. Feel free to answer on this poll before we move on. All right, so it's a pretty spread out distribution here, actually, but it seems as if, a very few number of those in attendance have a really streamlined way of working that is less than 1 week related to the qualification, onboarding, and approval of a supplier as well. So, we've come to the right place. We're learning here together. What are some of the important steps? What are also then some of the foundational aspects that are kind of facts that can help us drive, kind of the business case for this in the organization if you're looking to get more resources to help out. But it seems like the majority of people in attendance, 60%, it takes more than 2 weeks. And with 30% of those people being over a month, 30% of those people being 2 to 4 weeks. So it's a big chunk of time, of course, being spent on qualifying, onboarding, and approving suppliers. And I'm guessing that there's probably a correlation between that grouping of that 60% with kind of that 60% that was also utilizing homegrown solutions as well. So this is not surprising to us in any way, shape, or form. So let's hope that we can be able to offer up a little bit of an alternative of ways that you can be able to automate some of the elements related to supplier qualification. And some of the things that I'm going to share in the steps might seem very basic, right? But nonetheless, these are some of the things that I think are important to think about whether you're adopting tooling such as ours, or whether you're, going to try and create a solution internally yourself as well. There's a few key elements of that. So step 1, get your data in a solution. First and foremost, that might seem very basic, but the bottom line is get rid of the duplicates, make sure that you're tagging and typifying your data correctly, and make sure that you understand if you want to segment your suppliers, what are the segments and what are the criteria for segmentation, right? It's all too often that people, are looking for automated segmentation, but they don't really know what they want to segment. So make sure that you define that up front and make sure that you're tagging and typifying your data correctly. Step 3, make sure once you have your data in, you're starting to define your parameters and acceptance criteria. We at Kodiak have a rating methodology. What does that mean in practice is when data and documentation is flowing in from a supplier, it's not just dead data and documentation. It's not just an ISO certification. It's not just the proof of a policy or some type of a business continuity plan, right? It is then the data and documentation that is also leading to an insight. Is the supplier a risk supplier? Or are they a supplier that we can quickly approve? Is there an opportunity there with that particular supplier? And I think that having some type of a parameter for what great looks like and what poor looks like is the starting point of that. And that's going to, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's going to be kind of some of those painful discussions that you need to have within your team around different KPIs. The place to start is your supplier code of conduct. This we cannot forget, right? What are the things that we are asking our suppliers to comply with? That is always going to be the starting point for qualification. Step 4, either greet suppliers at your front door or go knock on theirs. So what this really means is, do you want an inbound or an outbound motion within your supplier management? A mix of both is typically kind of what we see is works best. This means, of course, with our solution and, various, I'm sure, homegrown solutions that people have out there, you could be able to host, of course, a link on your website where suppliers can come and register on your websites to be able to start working with you. During that registration, they can also be able to provide you with some of the kind of key information that is required for qualification. There, they can also be able to determine, for example, what category they're in or what service or product they're going to provide you with. And with that information, you can start to orchestrate the process internally related to which category manager is supposed to then kind of issue the next step of the approval process, right? So this not only allows the supplier to come to you, but it also allows all inquiries to go and flow through, for example, the parties that should be involved: procurement, quality, legal, risk, compliance, so forth and so on. And then you can orchestrate the process after that as well, based upon the setup of notifications and workflows as well. But that's kind of the first thing you need to determine. Will you open an interface to suppliers, or are you going to go knock on theirs? We also have capabilities, of course, with the capabilities of our self-assessment and onboarding module, which is then allowing our customers pretty much to build up their own unique templates, just like you can build those forms that you can host on your website. And those unique templates you can be able to then roll out to suppliers, schedule an issue, for example, so they can be sent long in advance, but also those automated reminders can be able to go out. So it's continuously pushing the supplier for the response. Online portal, easy for them to be able to respond. Again, back to the fatigue, right? We want to make sure that when we're qualifying suppliers, we don't just focus on our experience of the qualification, but also the supplier's experience of that qualification as well. That is step number 5, right? Making sure that the supplier has a good time when doing it. Again, like we said, online, auto-save, easy for the supplier to be able to share data and documentation. And when they submit, the supplier directly not only shares their information, but the supplier is then weighted and rated in the responses that they provide you with. This is where our solution is excellent, but also I think that is the approach that you should have to supplier relationship management. Don't just rely on what the supplier says. Our capabilities at Kodiak focuses really on a 360-degree view. You see on screen here a supplier scorecard. We'll jump into it in just a moment when we get into the demonstration. But our scorecard is really focused on a 360-degree view. So it has country risk, ESG and compliance aspects, performance aspects, but it also has third-party risk, which is then related to financial, geopolitical, and sanction trade risks, right? As well as then media insights as well. And these different types of multitude of data sources provide us then with different looks at what is the profile of the supplier, what is the reputational risk, based upon their organization to us as an end business. Last bit, segment your suppliers. Utilize whatever model that you have, the Kodiak matrix, whatever it might be. The gathering, though, and capturing of data and documentation should help you to be able to more quickly segment your suppliers so that for example, what bucket are these particular suppliers going to be within, which allows you then to orchestrate those internal processes as well. So triggers are able to be preset in our solution, but these are the types of things that we need to think about, right? For each segment of supplier, do we want to have a particular flow that is related to those types of suppliers in how we manage those relationships moving forward, or how we approve those particular suppliers? I'm sure that many of those in attendance today, have, whether you're working in for example, deep industry or some other type of production, but if you're working in production, right, you have both direct and indirect material suppliers. And, they obviously are going to take two, foundationally very different paths within the solution. And it's the same thing within a service provider, right? You're going to take very different paths with an IT provider than you would, for example, with a marketing services provider. And it's important to be able to make those differentiations and orchestrate different internal processes based upon the type of supplier that you, in fact, are trying to be able to work with. So with all that said, here are some kind of tips and tricks on how to automate. I recognize that without good technology, it doesn't feel like it's going to be so simple maybe. But with that said, we're going to then shift over now to a quick demonstration of the Kodiak Hub solution. I will then share my screen here in just a moment. Just trying to find, let's see your entire screen. There we go. And excuse me for, you guys are going to see behind the scenes here for a moment, but I believe then that the entire screen is now in focus. Just want to get that confirmation internally. Great. So let's put these different steps into action now. And let's focus in on how we can be able to automate the qualification of suppliers, making due diligence a little bit more fun. Yay. When we enter into the solution, we're going to be able to see our suppliers around the globe. And what we see at a split here directly is going to be the country risk associated with suppliers. This is one of the interfaces that we can be able to start with. The reason I'm showing this is not just to be able to show off the kind of global risk that we can be able to track here, but really to show off the different types of typifications and segmentations that we can be able to have in the platform. So the taggings of your supplier data is one of the most crucial elements to supplier management. The solution allows you, of course, to be able to tag your data and documentation as you see fit so that you can have, of course, your categories or typifications, segmentations of your suppliers, whatever those might be. So at a click of a button, you can always be able to locate those suppliers, whether it's around the globe in this particular focus or, for example, in a list overview when you're managing suppliers more closely as well. So before I start zooming around to some interfaces of the platform, I do want to be able to give a quick little introduction, a quick orientation to the platform. There's three main pillars to the Kodiak platform. Insights, where you're going to be able to get more insights about your suppliers, contracts, documents, products and services that you are also then managing. And you are also going to directly from here be able to add new suppliers, import supplier data sheets, export supplier data. You can also, of course, pull over data, as many of our customers do, via API from their ERP or another master data solution. This is where you're going to be able to also, as you want to, segment your suppliers in that first view, whatever that might be. If that's, for example, just based upon categories, for example, based upon, for example, approval status of those suppliers, you can be able to extend these views as you see fit. What you can also be able to do here is save views. So as a category manager, I could be able to directly here save particular suppliers in a category that I would like to always be able to see, just in the same way, if I want to, that I could be able to pre-save a list of suppliers in a particular spend class that are most important to me, or my, for example, strategic suppliers that I always want to be able to pull up. And as we see here, we can also be able to quickly manipulate the different types of data headings. So you can see all of these data tags and data rows as the same type of data columns and data tags and data rows that you would have within your homegrown solutions or your existing kind of solutions that you have today, the same kind of way that you would be able to map that data, but a little bit more malleable in its use as well. This is also then where we would jump into individual supplier views and jump into their scorecards, which we'll do in just a bit, and we'll spend quite a bit of time in the scorecard. But before we do that, I want to be able to just quickly mention that impact is where we're impacting the relationship. This is where you're going to be able to orchestrate processes on the platform. You're going to be able to build up templates for assessments, audit checklists, and performance evaluations. This is where then you can also be able to roll things out to suppliers or auditors or internal stakeholders or suppliers that are going to respond on assessments, audits, or evaluations. This is also then when you get back reports on how suppliers have done. Those responses are weighted and rated, as they are as well for audits or performance evaluations. And this is also where you can be able to impact the relationship within the action space for collaboration and corrective actions as well, which you can be able to set into action. The intelligence space then is where you're going to be able to dashboard things and get up a lot broader views of supplier. For example, which suppliers are in particular risk groupings, comparing and contrasting suppliers against each other, being able to pull quick views of spend based upon classifications or typification, being able to, for example, see documentation if it's expired or not. These types of things that are crucial, of course, to not only qualification, but ongoing management of the supplier relationship. We also then have a few different features on the right-hand side I want to show off, of course. Different types of notifications, in-app notifications, as well as then we can get these sent to our email as well. So we can be able to directly have an understanding of what we need to be able to really kind of address whenever we come into the solution. We also then have a notification center where we can be able to build up various notifications. And that's where, of course, we'll be able to build up a lot of those kind of workflows based upon the triggers of things that happen so that different stakeholders can be able to get involved during the qualification process as well. So if we start from the beginning, let's start with first, for example, simply adding a brand new supplier. So let's add a supplier that is pending our approval. We'll then say that this is a brand new supplier that is, for example, located at Storgatan 41 in Stockholm. That is going to be then our offices. We need to have a name of that supplier. We need to have an ID, which we can be able to do in auto generation. We have a supplier contact person if we would like to input that. We can also then have directly populated here the supplier country based upon the supplier location. 4 simple data points required, only the supplier email, supplier name, supplier ID, and the supplier country. With the input of those simple 4 data points, we can push the rest of the work to the supplier. So they can provide us with their VAT number, their DUNS number, their banking details, their website information, their different types of insurances or tax limitations, but also then the documentation that's important to us within qualification. So based upon that simple input, I can be able to save that particular supplier. And now that supplier is added into the solution as a supplier that is now just pending the approval, which I can be able to jump over to really quickly and find all of those suppliers as I see fit. When it comes to the adding of new suppliers, I can not only add new suppliers manually by adding them here. Again, I can import that data. What I can also be able to do is, again, allow suppliers to come to our front door. This is then via registration forms. These can be branded and look and feel like they are, of course, based upon your business. You can typify as you like, meaning, of course, these are configurable forms, right? Whatever the data and documentation as well that you're trying to capture is completely up to you. And you can be able to have these, again, hosted on your website for suppliers. But as a use case that we've seen a lot of times, people also host these as internal links. And where that's, of course, really, really nice is, of course, say that you're in a distributed procurement organization or distributed supply chain, where people are trying to make buys around the globe. Then, of course, the qualification can still flow via procurement, especially if it's over a particular spend level or in a particular supplier category, which is also very important to a lot of businesses. So when adding a new supplier into the platform, after we've added that supplier, all we need to do is toggle over to the assessments. In the assessments, we're going to be able to choose a campaign that we want to enroll a supplier in. The campaigns are really send outs from templates. So the way that it works in the platform is that you're able to build templates. These templates have a drag and drop builder. I'm not going to go deep into the capabilities of this, but as we see, we can be able to build up very specific to different groupings or segments of suppliers or categories of suppliers, or very generic as well. Underneath each of these particular areas, these particular templates, we can be able to determine what are the areas that we want the supplier to respond upon. We can be able to then choose those particular areas. Those particular areas then have content that we can be able to configure with a, as we see here, overview, as well as then underneath these individual areas, we can be able to have different questions that we can drag and directly drop into scope or out of scope simply. The beautiful thing is that our solution not only offers the capabilities to configure questions completely to your unique needs, but we also host, as we see here, a global library. This global library is thousands of best practice question sets and KPIs that are then aligned with different types of legislative requirements, but also helping our customers to be able to get an understanding of what does, really good quality management look like. These are maybe the types of questions that you need to be asking your suppliers as well. One thing I missed, but I wanted to double back to as well, we're not just asking about data and documentation from a compliance or due diligence perspective here. You can also utilize this capability, of course, to have suppliers update their information. So for example, say I want to capture back particular data from them. I'll just drag that and drop that directly into scope to make sure that the supplier can be able to manage their own data here as well. This is going to show the supplier in the interfaces we provide them with the data that they have on file. They can be able to update that data if it's incorrect. They can be able to provide that data with us if they want different data. And of course, we can be able to they can be able to provide us with brand new data if we don't have the data at all. So we build the template with the data checks, with the content that we want to be able to capture back within whatever various areas that we want to be able to capture back data. We're also then going to be able to build up our messaging. So we can build up unique messaging, which we can, of course, brand and put in placeholders, which personalizes the messaging and makes it feel like it's coming directly to the supplier. And directly there, we provide them with a link or a button so they can be able to enter into the messaging that we've provided them with. Once we've built up a template, we can simply publish this particular template so that other users can be able to utilize this. This then allows us at a central level to be able to govern what is the content that people are going to be utilizing in their categories for qualification or due diligence. Whereas then as a category manager or a buyer, you're able to simply then enroll those suppliers in the campaigns that have been defined for you based upon the templates, the criteria, and the content that has already been defined for you as well. So once we're happy, of course, with the template, we'll be able to have different active templates, as we see here, that are going to be the things that we can enroll in campaigns. Campaigns are very simple. Here, we can be able to use existing campaigns. So say, for example, I already have an onboarding campaign for all of my suppliers, right? In this particular campaign, maybe I want to add different recipients. It's as simple as this. I can find those particular suppliers based upon their typification, classifications, but I can also just be able to quickly search for individual suppliers. I can be able to then choose them, schedule them out, and I can be able to then choose here the different dates in which these particular emails are going to roll out to suppliers. So I can be able to stagger out the sending to these suppliers, and I'm not going to have to follow up with it. Why? Is because the solution is going to automate the chasing down of the supplier, giving them reminders in the ways that I have scheduled it. What do I have on the back end? Well, I have then visibility. So suppliers that have been enrolled, I'm going to be able to see, have they submitted? Have they not? Have they opened? Have they not? Have they clicked on the assessment or not? And I can be able to scroll through and see, of course, those individual suppliers. Here, I can be able to also just quickly search for individual suppliers and see if they have, in fact, responded on the activities that we've asked them to do or not. I can, of course, not only use existing campaigns, but I can also start new campaigns for new groupings of suppliers that I want to be able to send out qualification and onboarding activities to as well. So what comes back to me? Well, when responses come in, it's not just responses, it's also going to be different types of reports. So as we see here on screen, we can be able to see different types of reports that have rolled back in. What we can be able to see here are then quick views of those reports. And we can also be able to dive into those individual reports and see where the supplier has done well, but also, for example, based upon red rings that have matched against, again, the parameters that we've already set up, we can also be able to start seeing where has that supplier potentially done poorly. This allows us as a team to spend our time in the right places, understanding where the supplier has maybe qualified against our requirements, but also where it is that we need to maybe set into action some type of corrective action for this supplier to be able to, in fact, improve. So it doesn't just land in the reports. We can also be able to, of course, land that data in the supplier scorecards. All of these things can be able to, of course, issue different types of notifications to us as users or various users. And here we're going to be able to see a kind of 360-degree view of the responses that have come in from suppliers, the data that they've shared with us. Some of that data might trigger some of those other data sources as well, as we talked about before. For example, the VAT or company registration number, the name of the supplier, these are things that might feed in, for example, to give us a credit score of that particular supplier. For example, to be able to track the media that is associated with this particular supplier, or for example, the entity name that might be giving us a result on the sanctions and politically exposed persons associated with this supplier. Again, all of these data inputs are then feeding back into the platform, giving us instant third-party results with native integration into our interface. So the 360-degree view is all here. I have, for example, the trade-related risks, the financial risks, as well as then the media risks directly alongside the responses that have come in from suppliers on the self-assessments that we've asked them within the different areas related to their business risk or their ESG profiles as well. So what does it allow us to do within this particular interface? Well, it gives us an understanding of their health, right? The overall health of this supplier we see here is related to this global rating, which can be then an average of these ratings associated. We can be able to adjust these ratings and weightings as we see fit. But the most important thing is that it gives us a snapshot of where to focus more. A, on the financial risk, which we can be able to directly see. B, on areas within sustainable practices, which again, we can be able to see what are in fact the problem areas and why are these problem areas. Here, then we can be able to directly identify what those problem areas are and what it is, for example, that we maybe need to be able to improve with this particular supplier. Or, for example, the documentation that's missing might be a reason for somebody to be able to update something within the approval flow. Approval flows are very simple within the platform. You can be able to set those up single or multi-threaded. For example, if we want to be able to push forward the approval as the first or the second or the third stakeholders, we can be able to simply do so. And as the last stakeholders, of course, we can be able to change the approval status with the correct user rights to be able to do so, to be able to actually give the thumbs up and approve those suppliers. Again, the things that can be able to trigger notifications to other users as well. This is not just where data sits. This is not just where insight sits. This is also then where let me go back to that interface. This is also then where the documentation as well as then the communication sits. So first and foremost, internal communication. Fantastic to be able to have note-taking capabilities that could also be able to trigger different types of notifications internally. This is a quick and easy way to be able to collaborate and communicate with your team when it is that you are trying to qualify and orchestrate the process of qualification. Documentation, of course, if there's ISO documents that somebody needs to come in and review, you can simply be able to review those documents that have been shared with you by suppliers, or for example, documents that you yourself have uploaded into the platform as well, or other stakeholders have uploaded into the platform as well. The expiry date, of course, is also going to trigger to internal stakeholders and suppliers alike to be able to update that documentation equally so as it is going to be able to house the documentation and the expiry dates as well. The last bit then that's sitting within the scorecard is also then the communication. Based upon the responses that we get, based upon the documentation we have or don't have, within the qualification process, we might want to set into action some type of a corrective action plan or some type of an improvement proposal. This is then where we're going to be able to directly communicate back and forth with the supplier in the interface of the same solution, where we can be able to here set up an action for this particular supplier, request maybe documentation of that supplier, as well as then we can be able to have communication back and forth in a professional chat bubble where the supplier can be able to access this in the same way they can be able to access the self-assessments via a password protected email, and they can directly enter into this interface. The beautiful thing is that the kind of backlog of the actions that have taken place within this are going to be seen within an action history. So this is going to be auditable. It's going to then have some type of weight. If somebody comes and asks, how are you guys qualifying and working with the due diligence in your supply chain? Well, here, of course, we have the backbone to be able to show them as well. There's a lot more to be able to show off in the solution, the other elements of impact, the intelligence. I just wanted to walk through a simple use case, of course, of adding a new supplier and enrolling them into a campaign and what some of those results would look like in a supplier scorecard. We, of course, would love to be able to show anyone that's interested in doing so more about the solution. I'm going to stop sharing. What I do want to be able to give the opportunity is if you are interested in booking a demo, please feel free to take the time and click on the button as you see here, where you can be able to directly go to our demo page and you can book in a demo with our team. If you're not interested in a demo now, you can also feel free to book a demo for sometime in the future. That's no worries. There's a calendar link there so you can be able to find. And other than that, I also wanted to be able to take the time to get around any questions and answers that we have seen within the session. So if there are any questions, I'll open up then right now. So please feel free to write into the chat bubble and ask any questions that we might have. So first question that we saw here, Katie, thank you for the question. Can the solution integrate with SAP? Absolutely. We utilize a middleware called Workato, which makes integration with SAP very easy. And plenty of our clients have SAP backbone, whether it's HANA or other, prior versions, then that's pretty simple. The determination really is what's the data flow, right? Is it a push and a pull? Is it only a push? Is it only a pull from SAP? And also kind of where does the master data record sit, right? And also when is that data pushed over to SAP or, for example, over to Kodiak? Those are the things that just need to be defined. But integration is something that we love, we recommend, and plenty of our customers have as well. So thanks for the question. Valerie, is all the analysis of vendors docs done by the company, or does Kodiak Hub support this? Thank you for the question. We are a provider of tech, which also does mean that we are not a service provider. We do not do due diligence on the documentation on the back end. With that being said, we're training an algorithm right now to be able to, with natural language processing, to be able to pull out, is the document in fact a valid document, for example, for ISO documents or codes of conduct or policies as well. But this is not something that we have a team that is cross-checking in any way, shape, or form. So that is a distinction between us and some other vendors that are out there. Just wanted to make that very clear as well. But thank you for the question, Valerie. There was another question about integration. Yeah, again, it's a determination of kind of a push and a pull. Does the supplier need to collaborate in two different solutions? Right. I mean, again, it's determining what is the use case. Sorry, let me push this on screen. So thanks, Nelly, for the question. What is the use case, right? Are you capturing the supplier data in our platform for qualification and initial kind of risk management, or to capture data on ESG aspects? Then maybe that would be the first snapshot of the data provided. Whereas, Coupa is a great sourcing solution. We're not a sourcing solution in any way, shape, or form. Plenty of our clients can manage RFX capabilities on our platform, for light RFIs and the like, just like you saw within the self-assessment capabilities. But that would be two different use cases. So yeah, in that instance, it would be the collaboration in two different tools. But of course, it is about cutting down as many interfaces to the supplier as possible. With that being said, we see that this isn't really any cause of fatigue when it comes to the fact that our solution is pretty simple to use comparatively to some of those other solutions that you're mentioning, especially Ariba, which we've heard many times. Ben, thank you for the question. Do we have many clients where the supplier registration process is internal and completed by employees rather than sending out to the supplier to fill out? And this is kind of what I was getting at before. Absolutely. That's internally hosted document or form, that hosted form can either be hosted externally or internally as well. Sorry, I just realized that I don't have my camera on. So you guys can be able to determine who it is that's filling out that form. Is it an internal document, for example, that buyers in the business or stakeholders that are proposing new suppliers or trying to register new suppliers are going to fill out, and then it's going to issue to procurement or to quality or to legal, right, or finance as the first stakeholder. That's determined up by the user, really, and the use case. So the process in Kodiak starts once the vendor is chosen. Angel or Angel has asked here. So no, I would say that the process can also start in the vetting process, right? When you're discovering new suppliers or determining which suppliers do you want to work with in a sourcing event. We have plenty of clients that also run their suppliers through our platform when they're doing, due diligence of prospective suppliers, as well as they do when they have selected a supplier as well. But, I would say the typical use case, yes. With that being said, there's very, very varied use cases as well. Whereas, kind of we're utilized prior to the sourcing events that are going to be issued as well. So thank you again for Charity for the question. Sourcing events, again, we're not a sourcing solution. With that being said, we do have customers that have, managed plenty of RFIs, RFPs within the platform, because the capabilities to build up templates, roll them out to suppliers or prospective suppliers are similar in a lot of ways. And then, of course, you can be able to check off a lot of those qualification criteria as well. D365 saying was a question. Absolutely. We can be able to integrate with D365. No problem. Just like it is, of course, with SAP. We have clients that have that solution as well. There is the capability to integrate with not only other third-party ERP solutions, except for SAP and D365. Again, like our solution, our architecture is open. The other thing to kind of remember is that we also have an open third-party kind of policy, in the sense of like a bring your own license. So if you have Dun & Bradstreet or CreditSafe or another solution for third-party risk, we're also able to be able to integrate EcoVadis, Integrity Next included in that as well, to visualize that data in our supplier scorecards also. Nelly, also, how do you cover the linking of vendor legal entities with their manufacturing sites? That's always, of course, going to be something that we help our clients to be able to do. It's about the data architecture, pretty much making sure that you're grouping that data properly back to kind of the primary supplier, whereas then those individual sites are also treated as individual suppliers, which is very important, something that's not to be missed as well. Glenn, the last question before we move on is that our SRM is part of a wider solution, sourcing, SRM, and contract management system. Important that we link contract. Do you facilitate to manage contract management? Absolutely. I mean, contract data, the actual documentation, but also the contract data can also be housed in our solution. But again, sourcing is not really one of our primary offerings. With that being said, to house those contracts in our platform, absolutely, we can be able to do so. Are we a full-blown CLM, though, in the same way, for example, that you're going to be able to be provided with DocuSign or other CLM providers? No. With that being said, we also do integrate to DocuSign when it comes to not only the data that's pulling in from their CLM, but also then for the e-signing capabilities. So you could be able to sign NDAs or, codes of conduct or contracts directly through our platform as well, with that link up to DocuSign as well. Thank you all for taking the time for today's session. I really appreciate it. I'm going to now actually issue the last item, which is the handout of today's content. So feel free to go ahead and download the content. If you liked today's content, then feel free to go ahead and give that a click, and you'll download that directly to your server. We appreciate everybody taking the time, and thank you so much. If you're interested again in learning more about Kodiak, feel free to read more about us online, ask for an on-demand demonstration, or for example, reach out to our team via the requested demo link and or on our website. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.